Hello YouTube, this is Pastor Green. We're doing another creation science seminar. Today's just going to be a question. What about the day age theory? You guys can always email me at godsohman@gmail.com. As you guys know, I live in Cincinnati, Ohio, which is about right here on the map. And what I believe is that all scripture is given by inspiration of God and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness. That's 2 Timothy 3:16. 1 Peter 3:15 says, by sanctify the Lord God in your heart, and be ready to always give an answer to every man that asketh you, and a reason for the hope that is in you, in meekness and fear. So you always want to try to give somebody an answer whenever they ask you a question. And what I hope to accomplish from this seminar is, number one, I want to strengthen your faith in God's Word. I believe that the Bible is true from cover to cover. Number two, if you're not saved, I want to try to convert you, or at least make you rethink your faith in evolution. And number three, if you are saved, you're not doing much for the Lord, I'm going to try to make you feel a little uncomfortable, because I think that everybody should talk to people about God and at least have a basic understanding of what they believe. 2 Peter 3 says, knowing this first, there should come in the last days scoffers, walking after their own lust, and saying, where is the promise for his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of creation. For this they are willingly ignorant, which means dumb on purpose, of three things. Number one, that by the word of God the heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of the water and in the water. Number two, whereby the world that was within, being overflowed with water, perished. And by the heavens of the earth, which are now by the same word kept in store, reserved for fire against the day of judgment and perdition of ungodly men. So basically what that's saying is that the scoffers on the last days are willingly ignorant of three things: the creation, the flood, and the coming judgment. And sadly, many Christians are also ignorant of the creation, the flood, and the coming judgment. And their ignorance has caused them to compromise the clear teachings of the Bible with currently accepted theories of science, like billions of years, via the gap theory and the day age theory. And I talked about the gap theory last week, and today we're going to cover the day age theory. So today we're going to do questions and answers and objections about the gap theory, the day age theory, lights from stars, carbon dating, things like that. So the question is, the day age theory, could the 7 days of creation actually be billions of years each? The day age theory really, simply says that maybe each day of creation could have been thousands or millions of years. So the Living Bible says in Genesis 1:13, let every earth burst forth every sort of grass, and seed beareth plant, and the fruit trees, and all this occurred on the third day. And there's a little asterisk there, and the asterisk is literally a period of time. Well, is that really a period of time? Psalms 94 says, for 1,000 years in thy sight are but of yesterday when it comes to the past. 2 Peter 3:8 says that one day is with the Lord is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is one day. Well, the day age theory was actually introduced in 1820 by Anglican theologian George Frober. And this right here is the Fear of Fenton Bible, and you can see right down here in Genesis 1, it says by periods God created that which produced the solar systems and that which produced the earth. So the Fear of Fenton Bible, which came out in 2003, said basically that, periods, so different ages of times God created the heavens and the earth. This is actually what it says in the Genesis 1:5. It says, into the light God gave the name day, and to the darkness he gave the name night. It was the close of the dawn of the first age. So Fear of Fenton surely believes that each day was a certain age. And then on here on number 8 it says, and was the close of the dawn of the second age. Genesis 1:11 through 19 clearly says, and God said, let the earth bring the grass and herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after its kind. And God saw that it was good, and on the evening and the morning were the third day. So on the third day, God made all the vegetables and fruits, all the plants. And then it says, and God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and God saw that it was good. And in the evening and the morning were the fourth day. So on day 4, he created the sun, moon, and stars. So the question, if God made all the animals on the 5th day, He made the plants on day 3 and made the sun on day 4. He made the birds and the insects on the 5th day. How are you going to have plants without a sun for billions of years? And then how are you going to have plants without the animals to pollinate them for billions of years? And James Barr, the professor of Hebrew, he said, probably so far as I know, there are no professors of Hebrew of Old Testament at any world-class university who does not believe that the writers of Genesis 1 through 11 intended to convey that their readers the idea that the creation took place in a series of six days, which were the same as the days of 24 hours we now experience. And he goes on to say, or to put it negatively, the apologetic argument, which supposes the days of creation to be long eras of time, the figures of years not to be chronological, and the flood to be a mere local Mesopotamian flood, are not taken seriously by such professors as far as I know. So James Barr is saying that every Hebrew professor he's ever met says that the author intended for each day to be a literal 24-hour day. And anybody that believes that days were long periods of time and the years were not, the days were not chronological, and the local Mesopotamian flood was a local flood, they're not taken seriously. And the word day means yom in Hebrew, and it's used 1,541 times in the King James. 1,539 obviously means a literal day. One time it does mean a 12-hour day. In John 11:9, it said Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours of the day?" Which, that's talking about, the day from the amount of light we have. One time it might mean a longer time, but it still might mean one day. In Genesis 2:4, it says, "These are the generations of the heavens and of the earth when they were created, in the day the Lord God made the heavens and the earth." And if you remember, on day 4, he made the heavens, he made the stars, the sun, moon, and stars. So if they're talking about the heavens, then they're talking about the sun, moon, and stars, and that was on day 4. So very possibly that could mean the one day also. Acts 9:9, it says he was 3 days without sight, and neither did eat or drink. And John 2:19, it says 3 days I will raise him up. There are no verses in the Bible where yom means anything other than a normal 24-hour day if it's modified with a number like the second day. So the scoffers will say the first 3 days are not literal days if there's no sun. Well, Exodus 20:11 puts all 7 days as being the same. It says, basically work 6 days, for on the 7th day God made heaven, the earth, the sea, and all them in them is. So you work 6 days and you rest on the 7th because God created everything in 6 days and rested on the 7th. They say there's no closure to the 7th day, so that could be billions of years. Hebrew calls for day 7. It's very literally a normal 24-hour day, and many scriptures refer to the 7th day. The 7th day is symbolic of God's rest, but it was also a literal day in Genesis 1. Question: were the Jews to work 6 days and take the rest of their life off? People say science has proven that Earth is billions of years old. Well, there's overwhelming evidence that the Earth is not billions of years old, and you can see my seminar 1B, The Age of the Earth, to get more information on that. They say the death before sin only indicates human death, and Adam's sin did not affect creation. But Genesis 3:18 says, because of man's sin, plants grew thorns and thistles. And remember, Abram sacrificed an innocent ram in Genesis 22. And there's scores of scriptures referencing telling that nature is suffering because of man's sin, like in Romans 8:18. People will say many intelligent, godly men teach the earth is billions of years old. But God's word is the judge, not the majority opinion. History is replete with examples where the majority has been wrong. People say, well, this should not be a major divisive issue. I agree. They just agree with me and there'd be no division. Jesus always divides. People say that 2 Peter 3:8 and Psalms 94 indicate that a day may be 1,000 years. And neither of these passages are talking about creation, but even if it was, both say thousands, not billions. And plants on day 3 cannot survive billions of years without the sun on day 4, or insects to pollinate them on day 5. People say God was using simple language to explain creation to a simple people. But this assumes that ancient man was dumb, and we need modern gurus to tell us what God's word means. A lot of cults get started that way. So basically what happened is in 1795, Hutton's theory, the book The Theory of the Earth, was published, and it made people doubt the Earth was 6,000 years old. Then Thomas Chalmers started the gap theory back in 1814, and Christians accepted the billions of years idea into the Bible. And then George Fulber invents the day-age theory in 1820. And then Darwin's book came out in 1859 called The Origin of Species, and it made people doubt the Creator. And in the video Let My Children Go, they make a quote that says that 75% of all children raised in Christian homes who attend public schools will reject the Christian faith by their first year of college. Exodus 20:11 is very clear. It says, "For in 6 days the Lord made heaven, the earth, the sea, and all that in them is." And that pretty much comforts everything. So a question: how can we see billions of light years away if the universe is only 6,000 years old? Well, we actually see a lot of stars in the sky. Nehemiah 9:6 says, "Thou, even thou art Lord alone. Thou hast made heavens and the heavens of heavens, with all thy host of the earth and all the things that therein, the sea and all therein, and thou preserve them all, and the host of heavens worship thee." We've seen, there's basically when a star dies, you get a nova, and if it's really big, you get a supernova. And astronomers have observed that about every 30 years, a star dies and explodes into a supernova. And if the universe is billions of years old, how comes we only see less than 30 supernovas? There should be several hundred million of them. Are the stars wrong, or is the evolution theory wrong? And if a star evolved, star bursts should equal star deaths. Novas and supernovas are star deaths, and many of those have been observed. And where's the evidence for star bursts? It's been estimated that if there's enough stars for every individual on Earth to own 11 trillion of them, and that's only the stars we know. We don't know about the stars we don't know. If stars evolved, then star bursts should equal star deaths. Novas and supernovas are star deaths, and many of them has been observed, but nobody's ever seen a star being born. This textbook right here in Holt Science says in the little figure over here, new stars are constantly being born in the clouds of gas and dust. Such are these columns of the Eagle Nebula. This image is taken by the Hubble Space Telescope. And here's a little reference right there. This right here is talking about a star baby. And Martin Harwood in Science Volume 231 said, "The silent embarrassment of modern astrophysicists is that we don't know how even a single one of these stars managed to form. No one has ambiguously observed material falling into an embryonic star, which should be happening if the star is truly forming. No one has caught a molecular cloud in the act of collapsing." And that was Ivan Peterson of the Winds of Starbirth. Fred Whipple said in the Mystery of Comets, "Precisely how a section of interstellar clouds collapse gravitationally into a star, or double or multiple stars, or a solar system, is still a challenging theoretical problem. Astronomers have yet to find an interstellar cloud in the actual process of collapse." Charles Landon and Frank Hsu in The Formation of Sun-like Stars said, "The origin of stars represent one of the most fundamental unsolved problems of contemporary astrophysicists." Richard Wyndhurst says, "No one really understands how star formation proceeds. It's really remarkable. But all over the world we see stars in the sky." Genesis 1:16 says, "Let there be lights in the firmament in the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons, and for days, and for years. He made the stars also." So Genesis 1:16 is saying that God made the stars for us, humans. That way we can determine the signs and seasons. Psalms 147 says, "He counts the number of stars. He gives names to them also." Psalms 148:4 says, "Praise him, ye heavens of heavens, and ye waters that be above the heavens." And this makes me think that maybe there's something beyond the stars. Psalms 104:3 says, "Who layeth the beams of chambers in the waters, who maketh the clouds of chariots, who walk upon the wings of the wind." Psalms 29:3 says, "The voice of the Lord is upon the waters, and the God of glory thundereth. The Lord is upon many waters." And maybe all that we see in the universe is one of those glass balls sitting on God's dresser, and he shakes it once in a while. It's been estimated that there are enough stars for every individual on Earth to own 11 trillion of them. And yet the best telescope we have is the Hubble Space Telescope. They actually looked at the Hubble Space Telescope, and they basically watched the area star. The area is 1/30th the size of a full moon, and it's about the size of a grain of sand if you held it at arm's length. And they stared at that star for 10 straight days. And this is actually what they saw. More stars were seen in the small area that could be accounted. Stephen Hawking says, "Stars are so far away that they appear to us to be just pinpoints of light. We cannot see their size or shape. So how can we tell the different types of stars apart? For the vast majority of stars, there's only one characteristic feature that we can observe, and that's the color of their light." So what they do is they take two telescopes from known distances apart, and they've used parallax trigonometry to figure out how far away that star is. You guys remember sine, cosine, tangent from school? Well, the diameter of the Earth is about 8,000 miles. So if they take Earth in January and the Earth in June, they can basically take two big distances to look at a star. So the distance is going to be about 93 billion miles. 93 million miles. That's 149 kilometers, or one astronomical unit, which is equal to 8 light minutes. So if you double that, then you're going to get 2 astronomical units, which is 16 light minutes, because the distance between the Earth and the Sun is one astronomical unit. So if you double it by doing it Earth in January, Earth in June, you're going to get 16 light minutes. So if the Earth orbit around the Sun is 16 light minutes across, then 1 year is going to be 528,948.76 minutes. And if you look at the bottom, that little yellow circle there, that's the Earth's orbit. It would almost be like you taking 2 telescopes 16 inches apart and looking at a dot. So that dot would have to be about 525,948 inches, or 8.3 miles. You see that little dot over there. And how can you exactly tell where you were 6 months ago? And like I said, the Earth's orbit around the Sun is going to be 16 light minutes across. 1 light year triangle is going to be an angle of 0.017 degrees. To measure the distance of a star 1,000 light years away, you have to measure a distance of 0.00017 degrees. That would be like keeping 2 surveyors 16 inches apart and moving the third point 830 miles away. That's like having 2 surveyors 16 inches apart looking at a dot in Chicago from Pensacola, Florida. Measure a distance of 15 billion light years away is impossible, but I'll give them 100 light years away. And this right here, this textbook's even saying parallax trigonometry can only measure less than 1,000 light years. This accuracy will enable SIMS to determine stellar distances to 10% accuracy out to a distance of 482,000 million miles. And this is an improvement of several hundred times of what is possible today, but it's still only 82,000 light years. So how can we measure partway across a little galaxy? so we can now measure partway across a little galaxy. So what? What a mighty God we serve. And this article here says a project aiming to create an easier way to measure cosmic distances has instead turned up surprising evidence that our large and ancient universe might be even bigger and older than we once thought. If accurate, the findings would be difficult to mesh with current thinking about how the universe evolved, one scientist said. A research team led by this guy at the Carnegie Institution of Washington has found the Triangulum Galaxy, also known as M33, is about 15% further away than our Milky Way than we previously calculated. The finding, which will be detailed by an upcoming issue of Astronomical Journal, suggests the Hubble constant, the number that measures the expansion rate of the age of the Earth, is actually 15% smaller than other studies we found. Currently, most astronomers agree that the value of the Hubble constant is about 71 kilometers per second per megaparsec. A megaparsec is 3.2 billion light years. If this value were smaller by 15%, the universe will be older and bigger by this amount as well. Scientists now estimate the universe to be about 13.7 billion years old, a figure that has seemed firm since 2003, based on measurements of radiation left over from the Big Bang, and about 156 billion light years wide. The new finding implies that the universe is instead about 15.8 billion years old and about 180 billion light years wide. And if they think the universe is 156 billion light years across, but only 13.7 billion years old, wouldn't that mean that the stars would have to go faster than the speed of light? In fact, it would be 11 times faster than the speed of light. These people right here from the Ohio State University says, the researchers stated their surprising conclusion after using a new method they intended to calculate intergalactic distances, one that they say is more precise and requires fewer steps than standard techniques. We wanted an independent measure of distance, a single step that would one day help the measuring dark energy and other things. The new method took 10 years to develop and relied on optical and infrared measurements gathered from telescopes around the world. The researchers looked at a binary star system in M33, where the stars eclipse each other every 5 days. Unlike single stars, the masses of paired stars can be precisely calculated based upon their movements. With knowledge of the stars' masses, the researchers could calculate the true luminosities, or how bright they would appear if they were nearby. The difference between the true luminosity and the observed luminosity gives a distance between the stars and Earth. The team's results suggested that the stars were about 3 million light years from Earth, or about 500,000 light years further than they would expect using a commonly accepted Hubble constant value. Not impossible? Lawrence Cross, a professor of astronomy, the chair of the Department of Physics at Case Western Reserve, who was not involved in the study, said the idea of a significantly reduced Hubble constant would be hard to accommodate. Things fit right now very well for a Hubble constant of the low 70s, Christ said in a telephone interview. It corresponds very well with the age of globular clusters, and we've determined them from the age of the universe. This would be hard, although not impossible, to change things by 15%. Stankin and his team plan to follow up their findings with a distant measurement for either another binary star system in M33, or to look for a binary system in another galaxy, perhaps Andromeda. It's extremely important to have independent measurements of the Hubble constant, Stankley told Space.com. That's what we're working towards. The thing to consider about starlight. Scientists cannot measure distances beyond 100 light years accurately. And no one knows what light is, nor can they always travel, nor that it can travel the same speed throughout time and space. We have these things called black holes, and the idea of a black hole is it can actually pull light towards it. Well, if black holes can pull light towards it, that's going to slow it down. February 18, 1990, Houston Chronicle page 10A ran an article about Danish physicist Dr. Ho working at Harvard, and he was able to slow down light by cooling it. They cooled it to 50 billionth of a degree above absolute zero, and the light slowed down to 38 miles an hour. And in Dallas Morning News, February 2000, the article says they had now slowed it down to 1 mile an hour. And in this article, it says that they actually brought light down to a full stop, and then he sent it on its way. Two independent teams of physicists have achieved the result. One led by Dr. Vestergaard Hall of Harvard University and the Roland Institute for Science in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and the other by Dr. Ronald Walsworth and Dr. Lukin at the Harvard Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, also in Cambridge. It says they have succeeded in holding a light pulse still without taking any energy away from it. In this article right here, it says Eureka, science breaks the speed of light. It says the scientists claim they have broken the ultimate speed barrier by the speed of light. The research carried out by the United States partial physicists have shown that light pulses can be accelerated to up to 300 times their normal velocity, or 186,000 miles per second. The work was carried out by Dr. Wang at the NEC Research Institute in Princeton, who transmitted a pulse of light towards a chamber filled with specially created gas. And this says that they made it go 300 times the normal velocity. During the last 300 years, at least 164 separate measurements of the speed of light have been published. 16 different measurement techniques were used. The speed of light has apparently decreased so rapidly, the experimental error cannot explain it. And if you look at this article here, it shows you this curve, and it shows you that this the speed of light has decreased over the years. Of course, it actually leveled out around 1956 when the idea of the atomic clock came into play. And the problem with the atomic clock is the calculation uses the speed of light in their calculations. So how can you use the atomic clock to judge the speed of light if you have to use the speed of light for their calculations? And what do evolutionists say? That the speed of light was 10 billion times faster at time zero. It would have to be that for the Big Bang to exist, because how else would you get all these stars to displace in that such a short period of time? No physical law prevents anything from exceeding the speed of light. In two published experiments, the speed of light was apparently exceeded by as much as a factor of 100, but they'll tell you that nothing can affect the speed of light. But in the Big Bang Theory, you would have to have the speed of light be broken in order to actually have their theory make sense. What do evolutionists say? A shocking possibility is that the speed of light might change in time during the life of the universe. And this article here in August of 2001 said the speed of light may have changed over history. This article here, August 16, 2001 says, this has fundamental implications in our understanding of physics, said John Webb, a professor of the University of South Wales in Sydney, Australia. Webb led the research team that made the discovery. The team found the fine structure constant, a number that determines the strength of electromagnetic forces and thus the speed of light. It may have been slightly smaller billions of years ago. If true, then current theories are incorrect, because they maintain the speed of light and other fundamental properties do not change in either time or space. And we have shown how this person right here in an article called A Time-Varying Speed of Light says we have shown how a time-varying speed of light could provide a resolution to the well-known cosmological puzzles. One mystery is that the declining speed of light seems to be able to explain is why opposite extremes of the cosmos are too far apart to have ever been in contact with other appearing to obey the same rules of physics and are even about the same temperature. It would only be possible for light to cross from one side to the other if it traveled much faster than today's moments at the universe's creation. It was so fast that it could have been traveling at 186,000 miles a second multiplied by a figure of 70 zeros behind it. This article says that the speed of light may not be a constant. This article says that the speed of light may change. This article right here says the speed of light of the cosmos is questioned. This one says it could require a complete revision or maybe an abandonment of the inflational hypothesis. This Discover magazine's asking, is Einstein wrong about the speed of light? There's a book right here called Faster Than the Speed of Light. And there's many articles that talk about how speed of light is changing. And this article here in 2004 says the speed of light may have been lower. In August 2005, it says researchers in Switzerland have succeeded in breaking the cosmic speed of light, because the cosmic light speed limit, by getting it go faster than light. And there's all these different articles talking about the speed of light can change, it can be sped up, it can be slowed down. But people don't exactly understand even what light is. This article is talking about how the speed of light actually moved backwards. So here's some more things to consider about starlight. The creation was finished and mature when God made it. Jesus made a wine out of grapes that never existed and aged in a time that never was. How old was Adam on day 6? Well, obviously he was 0. Adam was 0 on day 6 when he was first made. I mean, God didn't put Adam and Eve in the garden and said, here's a bunch of seeds and tools. You guys better get started real quick. Better get planted if you want super. Things to consider concerning starlight. The creation was finished and mature when God made it. Adam was full grown, the trees had fruit on them, and the stars could be seen the first day. And a light year is a distance and not a time. That's like if I sit there and say, okay, I'm going to run 1 mile, and then you time me. That's going to be the green mile. So I'm going to run from this point to that point, and it takes me 10 minutes to run 1 mile. Well, the green mile is not a distance, it's a time. It takes me 10 minutes to run 1 mile. But I guarantee you, when I'm 90 years old, it's going to take me more than 10 minutes to run 1 mile. So the green mile is going to be 10 minutes today, but when I'm 90, it's going to be a lot more than 10 minutes. Also, since the speed of light is not proven to be a constant, why will star distances have anything to do with the age of the universe? So the question is, how do scientists measure the age of stars? Well, this article in Discover magazine in September of 2003 said, we can also find absolute ages by comparing a star's color and brightness with those of stellar evolution models. What? They're actually using the color of the stars to judge the distances? See, everybody's asking how they got the light from go to the star to here. And it is he that sitteth upon the circle of the earth, and the inhabitants thereof as a grasshoppers, that stretched out the heavens as a curtain. So 17 times in the Bible, it mentioned God stretched out the heavens. He stretched out the stars. On day 4, he made the stars. So nobody's asking how the star got from the earth to there. That's what they should be asking. And what about the red shift? When a white light hits a prism, it goes into multiple different colors. It's actually a very common scientific practice. We'll take a beam of light, they'll put it through a prism, and they'll get the spectrum of color. And so if the star's moving away, it's going to have a red shift. Basically the Doppler effect is the same idea. So as the train's coming to you, it's going to get the sound's going to be lower as the train approaches. The sound's going to get higher as the train approaches, and it's going to get lower as the train passes. So as the train's coming to you, it's going to get higher and higher, and as it's going away, it's going to get lower and lower. Well, it's the same idea with the stars. If the star's coming to us, it's going to have a blue shift. If it's coming away from us, it's going to have a red shift. This was an early sign that the red shifts reliably indicated a distance of galaxies. And it talks about quasars. It says, however, the diagram shows a wide scatter and apparent brightness at every red shift. In fact, there's little correlation of brightness to red shift at all. Either the quasars come in extremely wide range of integral luminances, as most people believe, or the red shifts don't indicate distances. This person says, thus for us the only conclusion that can be drawn is that at least some of the quasars are relatively nearby, and a large fraction of red shift is due to something other than an expanse of the universe. In the book Evolution Crusher, it talks about some redshifts are not due to the Doppler effect in the expanding universe. Evolution Handbook is a fantastic book I recommend anybody get. And it talks about all these different quasars, and they're supposed to have red shifts. And this article right here says nearby discovery poses constant puzzle. Can a distant quasar lie within a nearby galaxy? And it says a quasar with an enormous red shift found embedded in a nearby galaxy with a far lower redshift. It's an unsolved riddle for the Big Bang astronomer. The Science News says another set of observations indicate that the universe appears to be 8.4 to 10.6 billion years. A new work relied upon the Hubble telescope and attained a distance of faraway galaxies. A 10 led by this person of the University of Cambridge in England used a two-step method to estimate the Hubble constant. First, they observed a type of standard candle, which are stars known in the Cepheid variables, to find a distance to a spiral galaxy in M96. It says you have to be very careful about drawing conclusions because of all the Hubble constants have huge systematic errors. Astronomers believe that the Veil is one of the best studied supernova remnants. It was 2,500 light years away and 18,000 years old, and they were quite wrong. In fact, the Veil is only 1,500 light years away and about 5,000 years old. And that was an article from Scientific America said that Rip Van Winkle showed the stars must be very, very younger than they thought. James Jean said, even the nearest Cepheids are the remote. It is very difficult to determine their absolute distance with any great accuracy. All large distances in astronomical literature is subject to an error of perhaps 10% from this cause alone. We know not the faintness arises from two causes, distance and absorbing matter of space. It is not generally possible to be proportionally accurate between the two. So what they're saying is, in the light that we see be the distance of how far away, or could it be possibly that there's dust moving away from the star and you can actually see it better now? But again, I say get the Evolution Handbook. You get to see what happened with Harlan Arp, who dared to oppose the problem of the red shift. In Isaiah 42:5, it says that God stretched out the heavens. In Isaiah 45, He stretched them out. All throughout the Bible, it says that the God stretched out the heavens. So what's causing this red shift? Well, stretching the stars out from creation, which is mentioned 11 times, could be part of the red shift. Because remember, as the stars are moving away, it gets a red shift. So if God is stretching them away from the heavens, they're going to be moving away, so they're going to have a red shift. What about the light's tired? What about effects of traveling great distances through space? The Doppler effect says the stars are moving away. Light gets slowed or sped up by gravity, for instance, a black hole. And you can check out Robert Gently's teaching on halos.com. There's another great book by Brian Young. It's called The Stars and God's Word in the Sky. And you can also get a book called The Real Meaning of the Zodiac, which is by James Kennedy. In Job, it talks about different constellations. It said, can't thou bound the sweet influences of Pleiades, or loose the bands of Orion? Can thou bring forth Mizra in his season, or canst thou God Arcturus with his sons? All throughout the Bible, they talk about these different zodiac signs. And maybe the science is there to teach us the gospel. Maybe it starts with Virgo the Virgin, talking about the Virgin Mary having a baby. It ends with Leo the Lion, the trumpet god that rose from the dead. What about carbon dating? Radiometric dating is treated like the king of the proofs for evolution. It's like the emperor's new clothes. They think the carbon dating is going to prove evolution, but it really doesn't. Fossils are rarely dated by the position of the geologic column. They basically say this rock came from this fossil came from this rock, and this rock is this years old, so that must mean that this fossil is that many years old. In fact, this person actually admits that radiometric dating would have not been feasible if the geologic column had not been erected first. Ever since William Smith at the beginning of the 19th century, fossils have been and still are the best method for dating rocks. Apart from very modern examples, which are really archaeology, I can think of no causes of radioactive decay being used to date fossils. The Earth's atmosphere is about 100 miles thick. The Earth's atmosphere contains about 98% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, 0.06% carbon dioxide, and 0.0000765% radioactive carbon, which is C14, which combines with oxygen and then mixes equally with other normal CO2s by the wind currents. The radiation from the sun strikes the atmosphere and produces radioactive carbon, and it combines with oxygen to make CO2. And this right here is another Time magazine where it's basically describing it. So cosmic rays come in, they cause fast-moving neutrons. These neutrons collide with the atmosphere, the nitrogen atoms, and they produce C14. In this article, it talks about basically how CO2 gets formed and how the carbon-14 mixes with it. And cosmic radiation converts about 21 pounds of nitrogen into C14 every year. And if you look at the periodic table of elements, you can see the carbon and nitrogen are right next to each other. And you can actually use a Geiger counter to detect radioactive carbon or uranium or anything else that's radioactive. And C14 is being produced in the atmosphere by the sun, and it breaks down into nitrogen at a rate of 1/2 every 5,730 years. So basically the common idea is, during photosynthesis, plants breathe in CO2 and make a part of their tissue. Some of the tissue is going to be C14. So basically the idea is the plants breathe in the C14 and makes it part of their system. Animals will then eat the plants and make it part of their bodies. So the plants are going to absorb all this C14, and the animals are going to eat this C14 and make it part of their bodies. And it's assumed that the ratio of radioactive C14 is normal to normal C14 would be the same ratio found in living plants and animals. For example, if the atmosphere is 0.0000765% C14, then it's assumed that all living plants and animals are going to have that same percentage. And when the plant or animal dies, it stops taking a new C14. So by comparing the amount of C14 in the object being dated with the amount currently in the atmosphere, it can be estimated how long the object has been dead. If there's only half as much C14, then it is assumed that the object died about 5,730 years ago. Whatever C14, it has continued to decay. So half of the C14 means it should be about 5,730 years old. And since it can't go into anymore, since it can't gain anymore, it'll go out of balance with the atmosphere. So when it's alive, it should be this amount. The first half cycle is going to be this amount. The next half cycle, the next half cycle. But it never gets down to zero. And really, there should be no measurable C14 after about 40 or 50,000 years. And this is a chart showing you from birth it's going to have 16%, and then after the half cycle it's going to go down to 8, and then it's going to go down to 4, then it's going to go down to 2. These are how many clicks it's going to have on the Geiger counter. So it starts at 16, and then it goes to 8. That means it's been a half cycle. Then it goes to 4, and then 2. And with their short 5,700-year half-life, no carbon-14 atom should exist in any carbon older than 250,000 years old. Yet it has been impossible to find any natural sources of carbon below the Ice Age strata that does not contain a significant amount of C14. So we still find C14 in the Ice Age area. Even though much strata are supposedly millions or billions of years old, conventional carbon-14 laboratories have been aware of this anomaly since the 1980s and are striving to eliminate it and are unable to account for it. Lately, the best such laboratories, which have been learned during 2 decades of how low C14 measurements, how not to contaminate specimens externally, under contract to creationists, confirmed such observations for coal samples, and even for a dozen diamonds, which cannot be contaminated in stew of a recent carbon. These constitute very strong evidence that the Earth is not only thousands, not billions of years old. And while this all sounds good, there are still some assumptions in dating that needs to be considered. So if you take an item and you add water in and you have buckets in the bottom that lets water out, at some point you're going to hit equilibrium. The amount of water coming in is going to equal the amount of water coming out. And it's calculated that it'll take about 30,000 years for the Earth's atmosphere to reach equilibrium. And we know that, and the person that wrote this said, we know the Earth is not millions of years old, so we can ignore the equilibrium problem. And it has not yet reached equilibrium, it's still gaining. Radioactive carbon is forming 28 to 37% faster than it's decaying. If the cosmic radiation has remained at its present intensity for 20 to 30,000 years, and if the carbon reservoir has not changed in this time, then there exists the present time a complete imbalance between the rate of degradation in the radiocarbon atoms and the rate of assimilation in the new atoms for material in the life cycle. Fluctuations in the rate of C14 production meant at times the reduction rate will exceed the decay rate, while at other times the decay rate will be the larger. The assumption says the amount of C14 in the atmosphere has always been the same. But I ask you a question. If I put a candle in the room and ask you, how long has this candle been lit? There's a certain questions you're going to have. The first question is, when was it lit? So we're going to use a little empirical science on this. Let's say that we know how tall this candle is. 7 inches. Let's say we can measure the rate of burn. Every hour, it goes down 1 inch. So the question is, when was it lit? Well, you have a lot of assumptions. How tall was it when we started burning it? Has it always burned at the same rate? If you find a fossil in the dirt, the amount of C14 can be measured and the rate of decay can be determined, but that's all. How much C14 was it at its death? And has it always decayed at the same rate? You see, if there was a canopy of water around the Earth, it's going to block a lot of the UV light and radiation, which is going to cause there to be less C14 in the atmosphere. So the carbon C14 curve wouldn't work, because what if it started at 4 kicks on the Geiger counter? They've done different research where they found the lower leg of a mammoth had a radiocarbon age of 15,380 radiocarbon years, but the skin and the flesh was only 21,000. This was back in 1949. Living mollusk shells were carbon dated being 2,300 years old when they're still alive. That was back in 63. And back in 1970, they said, if a C14 date supports our theories, we put it in the main text. If it does not entirely contradict them, we put it in a footnote. And if it's completely out of date, we just drop it. That's back in 70. A freshly killed seal was carbon dated by having died 1,300 years ago, back in 71. The troubles of radiocarbon dating are indeedly deep and serious. Despite 35 years of technological refinements and better understanding, the underlying assumption has been strongly challenged, and warnings are out of the carbon dating may soon itself be in a crisis. Continuing to use this method depends on a fix-it-as-we-go approach, allowing for contamination here, fractionation there, and carbylation whenever possible. There should be no surprise that fully half the dates are rejected. The wonder is surely that the remaining half has been accepted. Robert Lee says, no matter how useful it is, though the radiocarbon method is still not capable of yielding accurate and reliable results, there are gross discrepancies in chronology and uneven in relative. That's back in 81. And the accepted dates are actually selected dates. And the whole blessed thing is nothing more than 13th century alchemy. And it all depends on which funny paper you read. It's back in 81. Shells from a living snail were carbon dated, being 20,000 years old, but still alive. That's back in 84. 11 human skeletons, the earliest known human remains of the Western Hemisphere, have been dated by the Accelerated Mass Spectrometer. All 11 were dated about 5,000 radiocarbon years or less. That's in 85. The two Colorado Creek mammoths had radiocarbon ages of 22,000 and 16,000, respectively. That's back in 92. A geologist at the Berkeley Geochronological Center, Schweitzer, used the most advanced techniques to date the human fossils. Last spring, he was re-evaluating the Homo erectus skulls found in Java in the 1930s by testing the sediment found around them. A hominoid species assumed to be an ancestor of Homo sapiens. Erectus was thought to have had vanished around 250,000 years old, but even though he used two different dating methods, Schweitzer kept making the same startling find. The bones were around 53,000 years old, at most, and possibly no more than 27,000 years old. And it's a stretch of time contemporaneous with modern humans. That's back in 96. And I have to say that 53,000 to 27,000 is still a 96% error. This professor lied about the age of the Neanderthals and artifacts for 30 years. A university panel exposed his frauds, and he resigned in 2005. The date of the skeleton at 21,300 years, but testing in Oxford showed it only to be about 3,000 years old. That's back in 2005. Another dating error was identified for a skull found in Germany that he dated at 27,400 years old, and it's believed that it was believed to be the oldest human fossil found until they actually found that it belonged to an elderly man who died in 1750. The last 2 years, an absolute date has been obtained for the Neanderthals above the trilobites. And it's a very interesting value of 300,000 years, plus or minus 300,000 years. You see that? They say this is somewhere between 300,000 years, plus or minus 300,000 years. So it could be 600,000 years, or it could be 0 years. Living penguins have been dated to be 8,000 years old. They're still alive. Material from layers of dinosaurs were carbon dated at 34,000 years old. Russian scientists carbon dated dinosaur bones at under 30,000 years old. This person from Columbus, Ohio, had 4 dinosaur bone samples carbon dated at about 20,000 years old. The samples were not identified as dinosaur in advance. Things to consider about carbon dating. Samples of known age, it doesn't work. Samples of unknown age, well, you assume it works. The elemental clay they produce, helium. This helium slowly escapes through the rocks in the atmosphere. Very little is to escape through space. After all the factors are considered, the helium in the atmosphere indicates the Earth is less than 2 million years old. There's a great book about carbon dating that's called The Mythology of Modern Dating Methods. And this person says the rocks do date the fossils, but the fossil dates the rocks more accurately. Stratigraphy cannot avoid this kind of reasoning if it exists. On using it as a temporal concept because circularity is inherent. Moon rocks back in 1969 were given to many different laboratories to be dated, and one rock specimen was divided into 6 different pieces, and they got ages rating from 2.5 billion to 4.6 billion years old. Dr. Hovind talked with James P. Dawson. He's the Chief of Engineering and Operations for the Lunar and Earth Space Division at the Manned Space Aircraft at NASA. He worked on lunar samples, including the Genesis rock. He told him that they found ages from 10,000 years old to 7 billion years old from the exact same rock. And The Bones of Contention is a great book about how this dating is done. What about potassium-argon dating? Potassium argon dating is supposed to be dating rocks that are millions of years old. If you look here, they have different flow dates. So the flow date happened in 49, and they're saying that it was probably about 2.7 million years old. 54, they said it was about 2.27 million years old. Back in 54, they said that it was about 2.7 million years old. And if you look at different samples, they're basically getting different numbers here. The exact same flow date is giving different numbers. So the half-life of potassium is supposed to be 1.3 billion years old. So at 1.3 billion years old, half the potassium is going to disappear. But they found out that as much as 80% of the potassium in a small sample of iron, an iron meteorite, can be removed by distilled water in 4.5 hours. In conventional interpretation of potassium to argon dates, it is common to discard ages where they're substantially too high or too low compared with the rest of the group, or in the available data such as the geologic timescale. So if they find something that's out of whack, they just throw it away. The KBS Tough name for this person was dated using potassium argon, and it dated at about 212 to 230 million years old. And then they found a skull there, and it said it looks like a modern human skull, but the skull was dated at 2.9 million years old. And later, 10 different samples were dated from 0.52 to 2.64 million years old. And this is more than a 500% error. In 1770, George Bluffin said the Earth was about 70,000 years old. In 1905, the age of the Earth was officially 2 billion years old. And the Minneapolis Tribune, August 25th of 69, said that the official date of the Earth and Moon was 3.5 billion years old. And they actually used potassium argon to basically find this out. Today's scientists are taught that it's 4.6 billion years old. This means that the Earth has either been getting older at a rate of 21 million years for the last 220 years, or 40 years a minute, or it's wrong. Here's some things to consider about carbon dating. There's some wild dates that are obtained. Dates that don't fit the evolution theory are rejected or not published, and the correct dates match the geologic column. It is based on the assumption that the original content in the sample is known, that the decay rate never changes, and the samples have not been contaminated, and everything decays downhill. The basalt from Mount Sicily gave a potassium argon age of 250,000 years old, even though it just happened. Lava from the 1801 Hawaiian volcanic eruption gave a potassium argon date of 1.6 million years old, even though it just happened. That's back in 68. Basalt from the Hawaiian gave a potassium argon date of 8 billion years old. Basalt from the Sicily in 1964 gave a potassium argon date of 700,000 years old. And then the one from 72 gave 3,500,000 years old. So there's a new lava dome growing inside the crater since the 1980 eruption. And when they actually checked it out, they got all kinds of dates. They got anywhere from 350,000 years old to 2.8 billion years old from the exact same lava flow. Things to consider about potassium argon dating. Rocks of known age, it doesn't work. Rocks of unknown age, it's assumed that it works. So things to consider about potassium argon dating. While dates are obtained, potassium leaks out of systems easily. Dates that don't fit the evolution theory are rejected or not published, and correct dates match the fictitious geologic column. It's based on some assumptions. It's assumed that the original content of the sample can be known, the decay rate never changes, and that the sample has not been contaminated. For more on other dating methods, check out the Evolution Handbook. And you can also check on a book called Radio Isotopes and the Age of the Earth.